Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. AITA for going home and my wife didn't let me into the delivery room. My, male 28 and wife's, female 29, child has just been born. Our pregnancy was quite normal in my perspective, and I did all in my power to take care of things and make things easy for my wife during this time. When her due day arrived, I accompanied her to the hospital, where her sister and mother welcomed us warmly. When she was led to the delivery room, the problem started to manifest itself. When I arrived, she told me that she had asked that only her mother and sister, female 27, be allowed in the delivery room, and that she wanted me to wait until I've delivered and calmed down before allowing me to enter. Due to the fact that I was taken aback and did not want to make a scene, I just said okay and waited in the waiting room. We hadn't really spoken about what we were going to do at the hospital, and I had no reason to suppose I wouldn't be there when my child was born. The next day, I phoned her sister and inquired as to whether she was aware of my wife's plans to do this. She was adamant in her refusal. I advised her to call my wife and ask if she was concerned about anything, since I'm not the kind of guy who would make a big deal out of things or make things worse for her. My wife just does not want you to see her like this, she said, and she went on to say that she didn't agree with my wife and attempted to convince her, but that it was ultimately her choice and that I should respect her decision. In total, I waited in the waiting room for 6 hours and received limited updates due to the labor's slow progress. I decided it wasn't worth it and texted her sister to let her know I was leaving, that I would see my child when they brought him home, and that I would complete the birth certificate paperwork the following day. They returned home around 9 hours later, and I was finally able to see my child. I was overjoyed. She felt upset at me for leaving her in the hospital after her mother and sister left the hospital. I was upset as well, but I assured her that we could talk about it in a few days since she had just recently given birth to a baby girl. She wouldn't let up, so I eventually informed her that she had excluded me from my son's birth for no reason, that I didn't see the point in sitting in a hospital waiting room for hours on end doing nothing, and that even her own sister believes what she did was wrong. She was furious, but I persisted, and she eventually admitted that she had made a mistake. She claimed that there may have been complications and that I should have been there, to which I responded that I wouldn't have been present since she had kept me out of the room, and that the physicians would have handled with any problems regardless of my presence. She has been speaking to me in hushed tones for many days, and she has labeled me a jerk for being insensitive. My wife's sister recommended me to just apologize and move on, noting that it was a difficult time for my wife. However, I think I owe a broader apology for how I was excluded from my own son's birth in the first place. Story 2. AITA for not wanting to change my name and asking fiancé to change hers. I, a 27-year-old guy, have been engaged to my fiancé for 3.5 years, 24 female. It's impossible for me to imagine my life without her. We have a wonderful connection. Because we have been unable to resolve this disagreement, I have written here at her advice. Recently, we've been talking a lot about marriage and what it might be like to be in one. In my perspective, one of the most valuable aspects of marriage is the opportunity to become family with one another, which includes sharing our last name. When I think of being linked with her in that way, I get immensely thrilled and delighted, as if we are a true couple who can be seen by the whole world, and I feel like the world is watching us. She, on the other hand, does not want to change her last name. Since it is cumbersome for her, that's okay with me, but I'm the only guy on my mother's side of the family who is allowed to use the family name. My 2 sisters are already married, so it's practically just me and my mother. It's a rather uncommon given name, as opposed to Johnson or Smith. The family name will go extinct if I do not continue to carry it on and pass it on to our children and grandchildren. My fiancé is unconcerned about matching our names and has offered that I change my last name to hers in order for us to be able to match, or that we just keep our respective last names when we are married. Due to the fact that she has a brother, her family name would be carried on anyway. I feel her name should be changed as a result, and she should accept a compromise and change her name. Are you upset with AITA because I refused to change my surname and instead requested that she change hers? AITA, there have been some inquiries about whether or not we should hyphenate our names. I am willing to do so, although she is not. Given the difficulties of changing her last name, she effectively argues that I may either adopt her name or accept that we have distinct last names, which is what I have decided to do. Additionally, several people have said that this is my hill to die on, because else I wouldn't be posting here. Rather, it's just something my fiancé and I are having difficulty figuring out, and we wanted to seek some opinion from others. I'm not going to cannot coerce her to do anything, and that's apparent. It's tough to keep up with all of the comments, but my fiancé and I are both keeping up with what's going on. She seemed to like it, which makes me pleased, but it has raised a lot of additional concerns for me to consider. We spoke about it, and we both agreed that it was acceptable for the kids to use my surname. She hasn't decided yet, but she may want to use my last name socially while preserving her legal name so that she doesn't have to deal with the difficulty of sharing a name while yet benefiting from the shared name. Because of a breach of Rule 3, this entry has been removed. Update: due to the overwhelming response to my initial piece, which well above my expectations, I felt you all deserve an update. It was quite tough for me to read literally hundreds of letters in which I was called a jerk and a jerk. For a little period, I'd even lost my calm. Shout out to the mods for not perma-banning me for my tantrum, even though it would have been fair. My wife and I, on the other hand, went through each and every comment together and had a lengthy discussion about everything. I hadn't considered the patriarchal/historical ramifications of asking a woman to take on a man's name and give up her own until now. It's just not something I had much experience with before. This was happening in the background for my wife and was causing her distress, but she wasn't fully aware of what was going on, much alone how to explain it to me. So it wasn't only the paperwork and inconvenience of changing her name that she was concerned about. She was also concerned about losing up her identity. Because I was completely unaware of her feelings at the time, I was pleased that some commenters supplied her with the words she needed to talk about it with me. As part of our endeavor to solve this problem, we performed 20 free and-me testing and created family trees. This turned out to be a lot of fun, and we both learnt a lot from our cousins, including some amazing family stories and tidbits. I highly encourage other couples to follow my example. We're both a lot more committed to our personal histories, and so to our surnames, now than we were before. In addition, it was really moving for me to link our trees, which provided me with the sense of romantic connection I was searching for via the names. What was the final outcome of the situation? We were married 2 weeks ago and didn't change our legal names in the process. We're debating whether or not to hyphenate our names in the future. Maybe. We're not feeling any rush to get it done right soon since we're still basking in the glow of our newfound marriage. If we are fortunate enough to have children, their names will be hyphenated, as will ours. For the time being, I'm happy to be married to the love of my life, despite the fact that we don't have matching Mr. and Mrs. titles. I still want to one day, but if we go through with it, the hassle of changing our names will be something we all have to deal with rather than something we all have to deal with separately. First and foremost, this experience has profoundly affected our approach to resolving our conflicts and challenges as a partnership in the future. We go through things methodically, politely, and without assumptions until we're able to comprehend one another, and this has proven to be the most useful component of our journey so far. So, even though I hadn't planned on saying anything, I did. Thank you everyone who called me a jerk a few months ago and called me an a-hole. It's also something my wife enjoys. Thank you very much for your wonderful thoughts regarding my wedding. I really appreciate it. My wife will read them all, and we are grateful to everyone who has expressed their well wishes for us.